podcast where we interview some of the most outstanding women in leadership positions in science. My name is Inês Veiga, and today I'm excited to introduce you to someone who's dreamt of working on health with antibiotics and viruses from a young age. Like me, she's Portuguese, and I have the pleasure of welcoming Sandra Caldeira to the show. Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you, Inês. It's a pleasure.
I'm thrilled to have you on the show today. We both first connected back in July, and your story immediately stood out to me as both compelling and inspiring. For those listening who aren't familiar with Sandra's career path, she is currently the head of the Disease Prevention Unit at the European Commission Joint Research Center. She holds a PhD on biomedicine that she did at the German Cancer Research Center in Heidelberg, Germany, after which she did some postdoctoral work at Stanford, United States, and the Instituto de Medicina Molecular in Lisbon. We love to begin each episode by learning more about our guest's background. So, Sandra, could you share with us a little bit more about your childhood and your roots?
Yes, so I think in hindsight, with the wisdom of age, I can say that I was a very fortunate child from 50 years ago in Portugal.
Wow.
So first of all, I was born in 1974 after the 25th of April. So this means I only know democracy in my country. And I think I was also very fortunate in the sense that, I had a really happy and worry-free childhood. I grew up in a city next to Lisbon. I played outside with my friends and my brother all the time. I walked to school. It was all very safe. I had a warm bed and very supporting parents all the time. So I think I had access to, everything that kids should have access. I really liked school. I was also very lucky that my elementary school teacher was also my neighbor. So he knew me ever since I was like maybe 2 or something. So it was very easy for me also to go to school, to learn. So playing, learning, good food, nutrition, physical activity, everything kids should have access to. That's what I had.
That's amazing. I also come from a small hometown, so I have a similar experience with everything being so close by. I walked to school, and teachers were also in my life, so I believe you had a similar kind of childhood. So what were some of the early influences that sparked your interest in science?
So I think that more than interested in science, I was very interested in health. And that's my starting point. Probably my parents also influenced it because my mother was a doctor. My father also had the pharmacy degree. So, we had, I remember, like health magazines and books and so on at home. I knew I didn't want to become a doctor, but, this health bug was there. I remember when we were driving from my hometown, so it's called Santarém, to Lisbon, and you go through the highway, and at some point, there's a big company, an industry with like huge chimneys and smoke and stuff. So nothing very exciting. But I knew they were doing antibiotics there from my parents, I suppose. And I always had this thing that's where I wanted to work, because I had read about Pasteur and Fleming. And I thought this whole thing of antibiotics and bacteria and so on was very exciting. So, then much later, maybe like 16, 17, also because of a book, I became very interested in viruses. I think it was a book from my parents. It wasn't something that I had bought for myself. And I don't know if it was a chapter or what it was, but there was a part where there was a bit of this philosophical question about viruses being living beings or not, like them not being living beings, but being so evolutionarily intelligent that it almost seems like they are. And this also was something that I found really intriguing. So I think these two things were really what dictated like my interest in high school for biology, chemistry, and so on. And that then made me do the university studies that I did on microbiology because, there were bacteria and viruses in it.
Amazing. That's such a young age. That's something sparked a joy in you that shaped your career. When you started your master's in biotechnology, I know you discovered the connection between certain viruses and cancer that led you to the Heidelberg in Germany and to work in human papillomavirus. So can you tell us a little bit more about your early on career and how it led you to your decision to do a PhD?
Yeah, so that's exactly what happened. So when I started my master's and I was still very tuned into this virus business, I started to become also very interested in cancer, like the whole mechanism of cellular deregulation and how cells would continue to grow and so on. And then I discovered that there were these viruses called human papillomaviruses that were associated with the development of cancers and in particular cervical cancer. So I asked my master supervisor if he would help me finding a place where I could work on this, and we both spotted the German Cancer Research Center. You know, this was the place for human papillomaviruses research at the time. The director eventually won the Nobel Prize for this linkage between viruses and cancer. So yeah, that's where I went, and that's where I really had. I went initially only for 6 months to do my master's thesis, but then I really liked the people, and I really liked Heidelberg. And the place was amazing in terms of an initiation to science and to lab work and so on. And I have to say that I also really like the scientific work itself and the lab, like the fact that I had this question. So I was working on some proteins of these viruses and how they were deregulating the cell cycle. And the fact that I would ask these questions to my cells or to my viruses, and the answers would always lead to other questions. And somehow it didn't feel right to end it there. So I wanted to continue. And that's also why I decided to do my PhD there, because I was happy there. And also like the research and the project really intrigued me. And it was something that I wanted to pursue.
Amazing. I know that you applied to a fellowship in Portugal, but then you decided to stay over there in Germany, right?
Yeah, so these were these fellowships that you could apply to go abroad. So it was a Portuguese fellowship, but I could do my studies in Germany, and I defended it in Portugal at the University of Lisbon. So I was still associated with a Portuguese university, but all the work was done in Germany.
And I know that something has left you a little bug that you wanted to continue your international studies or international stays. And after your PhD, you took a postdoc position in Stanford. So why did you choose to go there? And that was your experience?
Okay. The honest truth is I chose to go to Stanford because it was California. But not only. No. So I was actually doing my postdoc in Portugal. So I had gone back to Portugal, and part of my project, I needed to work on a technology that was like a big thing at the moment. And this was, I don't even want to say how many years ago, but it was just starting. And this was DNA microarrays. Basically, you would have like a solid surface where you can print hundreds of thousands of genes, and you can use these to test gene expression in cells. And I wanted to use this technology for my project on a particular genetic disease. And because this technology was still not very much used in Portugal or in Europe, I wanted to go and learn it elsewhere. And Stanford was the place where actually this technology was born and was invented. So this was the perfect place to go. And it was California, but that's also why I decided to go there, because it was the best place to learn it.
You ended up in a lab over there, I believe.
Yes, so I think you want me to tell the story that didn't go so well. I'm not going to go into details of why it didn't go so well, but basically 2 or 3 days after I arrived, I realized that I could not do the work that I had planned to do in the lab that was meant to host me. So that meant 2 things, like either I would come back and lose the opportunity of being there and learning, or I would have to find another place and another lab and so on to host me. And of course, I decided to go for the second one. It wasn't very easy, like I was used to having access to people more easily than the mentality or the time that people had there to dedicate to me. So initially I started trying to call the PIs and the group leaders in the labs, trying to explain my situation. But I realized that nobody would pick up the phone, or they would not have time for meetings for me. So I did things that now I don't even recognize in myself, but like I waited in the parking lot for some people to come back so that I could get them on their way to the car and convince them to find me a spot in their lab. I went to journal clubs or lab meetings to do the same thing, finding the PIs in the corridor and trying to find a place. And in the end, I don't know, like maybe after a week or so, I did find very kind and a very good group leader that hosted me. The project was totally different from what I wanted to do, but it was using that technology, so it was fine, like the purpose was to learn that, and that I did.
So you did end up learning this new technology that you want,
Yes.
not by the first plan that you had, but then you found a great way and you were resilient. You're very inspiring because some people out there they give up on this first try. So you are an example that you should continue and try your best.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot cross the Atlantic and then give up, right?
Of course. So I know at some point you discovered your love for writing, and that led you into the role of a scientific editor. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about this transition. What drew you to that path, and what experience was it like working at the journal you...
Okay, so I know exactly when I discovered that I really like writing and writing in a scientific context. And this was during my PhD, because all my colleagues didn't like to write up their theses, and I loved it. It was the best time. I mean, I really liked the lab, but if you ask me about the best time that I had in my PhD, I'm going to tell you that it was when I was in the basement of, of our institute writing down the thesis. I really enjoyed it. So I started thinking that maybe I should reconsider my career. I also started realizing that I really liked science in general, and that, after a while in a particular project, I was sometimes more interested in the project that was happening next door than my own somehow. So yeah, I still did my postdoc that I told you about, but I knew that this was not something that I wanted to pursue for the rest of my life. So then I started looking for other jobs, and yes, eventually I was fortunate to land a job at EMBO. It's called the European Molecular Biology Organization, and they publish several journals in the area of molecular biology. Then later also systems biology, molecular medicine, and so on. And that's where I started as a scientific editor.
And can you tell us a little bit more about your journey at EMBO, and how you ended up over there?
Yeah, so actually, okay, I applied to a job, and I actually applied. EMBO at that time had two journals, EMBO Journal and EMBO Reports was the sister journal. We called it like that. And I applied for a job at the EMBO Journal, so the bigger or more... it was being published for a longer time, and that job I didn't get. But during that interview, I actually told the head of the organization at the time that was interviewing me that I really liked the journal, but the one that I really liked was this EMBO Reports, so the sister publication. And in the evening, playing back the interview in my head, I was thinking, why on earth did I say this? Like you're interviewing for a position and you're saying that you like the job next door better or something, which didn't make so much sense. But, it was what it was. And I somehow found myself saying it. But then maybe it was for the better, because something happened and the colleague from EMBO Reports left. And obviously Frank, so he was the head of the organization at the time, remembered that I had said this. So he just picked up the phone and he asked if I was willing to join EMBO Reports, because the position had just freed maybe a week or two after I was, informed that I had not gotten the other job. So yeah, so that's how I ended there, and I really had 6 wonderful years at EMBO. I learned a lot. Also, the organization grew quite a lot during those years. They started new journals, so it was also lots of learnings in terms of new areas for me, also in terms of like project management and so on, like seeing a journal starting from scratch, a lot of insights also into the publishing world. So it was really, very, very interesting, and I was very happy there.
It's amazing. You put your foot on the door for this first journal, but then you ended up getting lucky. Maybe it was not luck, maybe it was hard work, but it's an incredible story, yes. And then after EMBO, you went and joined the Joint Research Center at the European Commission. So how come did the EMBO journey prepare you for this new job?
Well, I think it helped me a lot. And for some things, I realized already when I interviewed for the job at the European Commission, and other things I notice now, in hindsight, how many things I learned while I was there. Like doing the job like 6 years, reading papers and so on. Of course, I learned a lot about science and molecular biology and molecular medicine and so on in general. I also learned a lot about somehow the meta aspects of science, about integrity, about quality, about the rigor of the scientific method, how to apply it. There was things that you do. I think if you've been in the scientific world and in the research world, there's things that you do like naturally, even you apply to your daily life, no? Like you have an hypothesis and then you test it and you see, and maybe I miss a control or whatever. And there I really developed this to a point that it kind of became, something that I apply very easily in my life, and that I could translate also very easily to another field. So it was very easy also for me then to start a new field, because that's what happened when I joined the commission. But I also learned a lot about communicating science, synthesizing research. At EMBO, so my role was to read papers and then to decide what to do with them, either reject or send it out for reviewers and so on. And we actually rejected a lot of papers. And when we did, we always had to explain to the author what we understood from the paper and why we were rejecting it, for example. So, even these, turning sometimes manuscripts of 15, 20 pages, I would have to summarize it in 3 or 4 lines. And that's something that I still do very, very often, and that I think came very handy from that time. And then it was not only about communicating science or synthesizing it, but also really about communicating in general and communicating with others, being clear about what my doubts were, for example, if I think about the papers, being clear on what my questions were, and every time that I needed to ask for advice, for example. And also I learned how to say no kindly, how to justify my decisions, how to explain them carefully. Also about modesty, seeking the opinions of others. A lot of things that I carry with me, and that I think brought me a lot of benefits later, yes.
That sounds like an amazing opportunity, because from my understanding, I think you got both hard skills from all the science you had to learn and the synthesize, and also the soft skills to say no, to be a better leader, I believe, but I don't know. I'll let you answer that, I suppose. And so I think it was a great experience for you, yes. So, but then you went to the European Commission, and you have a leadership position over there right now. And can you tell us a little bit more what that entails? I know we'll, in the next episodes, dive deep on this matter, but right now I would like to ask you a little bit more about your job and what do you do at your job and what is the policy making like?
Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about the place where I work. It's called the Joint Research Center, and really the heart of it is science for policy. I realize that a lot of people don't really know what I'm talking about when I speak about this. So to give you a quick idea of what it means and how you can use science for making policies and improving people's lives. People in the area of policymaking tend to somehow simplify the whole process and divide this policymaking into a cycle with like maybe 4 or 5 phases. So you have something that you call anticipation, where you're really looking into the future and thinking, I might need a particular legislation or a regulation or whatever in this area. And for these, you have things like modeling and forecasts and tools like foresight and horizon scanning that really help you seeing, I don't know, sometimes societal developments, other times really technological breakthroughs. And you can try to understand what the repercussions of these are going to be in the future. And then you can think, what do you need to do, to capitalize on the advantages that these developments are going to bring you? Or what do you need to do to prevent some of the more negative effects that this can bring you? And these are things that you do in a very participatory way, so engaging with a lot of experts and so on. And then you get into the phase of really the design of the policies, and then eventually the implementation of the policies and their monitoring. And also there you need a lot of science. So, for example, at least at the EU level, and I think also in many countries at national level as well, when you start thinking about a particular policy, you don't necessarily choose one way of doing things. So you first consider a series of policy options, and you will evaluate each one of these policy options against different criteria, like socioeconomic factors, environmental factors, within the societal factors, for example, you can consider also health impacts. So for each one of these policy options, you will see what the impacts can be in many different areas. And we call this an impact assessment or an ex-ante impact assessment. And then out of it comes one option that is probably more advantageous because maybe it's more cost effective, or in the area of health, it will save more lives, or things like this, right? So you go for it. And also here, there's a lot of data that you need to collect, that you need to analyze. It's really a lot of science that you need to put into it. Then if you think about the adoption and the implementation of the policies, again, here also you need sometimes lab work, like really wet lab, chemistry, biology, whatever. Like if you think about having a regulation where you enforce limits for a particular compound or you ban it completely, then you need to have methods to detect this compound, to measure the levels. You need to have an agreement on what the uncertainty is for these measurements. You need to have, for example, reference materials that guarantee that everybody that will apply this reference method that you developed will have comparable results, will calibrate the instruments in the same manner, etc. So also here, there's a lot of science that it's regulatory science and that many people are not aware of, that their expertise can be applied in this area as well. And then, for example, in my unit, we do a lot of this work in terms of monitoring and evaluation of the policies. So in terms of data collection and so on, so that you can see exactly whether your policies had the effect that you wanted them to have, and whether they had other effects. And if you need to improve them, then you go back to the cycle with the new design and new implementation.
Okay, great to know. because I know some of our listeners, as well as me, aren't familiar with this kind of concepts. And we also have listeners from all over the world. So it's great to share the European Commission as well. How did you manage to secure a job over there? I know there was something a little bit different. So can you share with us?
If you want to join the European Commission as like a permanent official, you don't necessarily apply for a job. You apply to be on a list from which then the services can recruit colleagues. So that's what I did. It was actually in this period of soul searching where I said that I wasn't sure, I didn't want to continue in the lab, I wanted to write and so on. I also did a competition and I passed it and I was on the list. So then one day I received the invitation for the interview in Ispra. So that's the Italian city where I'm based. We're not in Brussels or in Luxembourg, but we are based in Ispra, in the north of Italy. And like even though I was happy at EMBO, I said I'm going to give it a try because it felt like really, really interesting. And the truth is that I don't know if it happens to other people. To me, it happens, for example, when I'm looking for a new house, a flat or something, that at one point you enter one and you feel like, wow, it's the right one, no? And with me, this happened at the interview. The people were so great. Most of them are still my colleagues that I really appreciate. They made me feel so welcome. The job was so interesting. Everything was really welcoming. And, I went back to Germany where I was at the time and I told my husband, wow, I really liked it. And I hope I get the job. And it was very complicated because he had a job in Germany. We had a small child. But then eventually I was offered the job and I decided to take it.
Great. And then you've been evolving in the positions. So how does it work over there and what kind of challenges did you have?
So the transition to the job itself was not very, it was a different field because when I started, I was actually working on nutrition and public health. It was nothing related to the thing. I mean, of course, there was the essence of, like life sciences, biology, etc. But it wasn't a field that I was particularly familiar with. It was very easy to get acquainted and to get to know more about it. Not only because I had great colleagues that introduced me to the topic, but also because it's something that you can apply so easily to yourself and like to your family. So my child was small and I had projects on childhood obesity. So I really, enjoyed reading about this and was very motivated. Also, I could feel that the impact would be very big of my work. And this really gave me loads of energy. Also, the Commission as an employer, really offers lots of trainings. So I could also understand what were maybe skills or competencies that I was lacking and have access to these trainings very easily. So yes, the transition was smooth. I mean, it's 14 years now, but it has been evolving quite smoothly.
What qualities do you believe most helped you in advancing through your leadership roles?
I don't know if these are, okay, first of all, I don't even know if these are qualities. Maybe they are just like character traits, let's call it like this. And I don't know if they have helped me in leadership roles, but I'm sure that they have helped me advancing my career and doing things right, I hope. And one, I think, is curiosity. And by curiosity, I don't mean only, like reading a lot and asking questions. I also mean that. I mean, like being very open to learning all the time, but also being very curious about people. sometimes I'm just curious about someone because they do an interesting job, or they know something that I don't. And I like to meet these people, and I don't get shy to do that. And also I'm very curious about the people that I work with. So I really try to understand, what is it that they are looking for? What is it that motivates them? What makes them tick somehow? And that helps me really understanding, of course, my colleagues, and understanding all my environment, and to adapt somehow, without effort, because you understand where you're moving and how people will react, and things are somehow easier for that reason, I find. And then the other one that, again, I'm not sure it's a quality, but I'm very stubbornly optimistic. It's almost stupidity sometimes. I find like people must think I'm stupid, like things are going so wrong, and I'm still like, no, it's going to work. But I am like that, and I think that really doesn't let me give up and doesn't let me lose my motivation. So I have a lot of energy to continue even when things are not looking so great. And I think that also brings people with me. And then from the energy of these people, I get more energy. So it's kind of a reinforcing cycle. Yes.
Great. Sandra, unfortunately, we're almost wrapping up, but we still have time for 3 lightning questions. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. So, first lightning question. What's the best piece of career advice you have ever received?
I'm not sure this is the best, but this is an advice that I received very recently and that really resonated with me. And it's, don't be the victim of your own story. So, and I interpret it as, if something is not right, just change it. Don't complain about it. Do what you can to change it.
Take action. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Second lightning question. What would you tell a young woman considering a career in science today?
I would say that there are many types of careers in science, that she should find the one that works for her. And really, if she can, because it's not always easy, right? You don't always have access to the things that you want to do or can, if she can really pick the one that makes you happy, because really we spend too long at work. So it's good that we take a lot from it, and remain open and flexible. And every time that there are different options, think about the option that will give you more growth, that has room for, that where there will be more opportunities for you to grow and try new things.
Okay, amazing. And the last lightning question. What is one scientific challenge you hope you can solve in the next 10 years?
Okay, so you know that I work on non-communicable diseases. For example, we work a lot on cancer in my unit. And even though we came a long way there's been many developments. For sure, there's still quite a lot to be done in terms of prevention, but also in terms of, like new treatments and so on. So there's a lot of stuff there, and also in communicable diseases and in health in general, where we need challenges to be solved. But if I have to choose one thing, I would actually choose climate change. It goes way beyond human health. It's already affecting people, but it's also affecting the planet. It's affecting all the living beings in it. So, any scientific breakthroughs, please, carbon capture, alternative energy sources, batteries, whatever, just bring them in, and also give us really the wisdom to implement them in a manner that benefits everyone in the planet, and the planet itself, of course.
Yes, true. So, Sandra, thank you so much for being so open and sharing your experiences with me and our community. It's been amazing to hear how you have navigated your path with such resilience and passion. To our listeners, we hope you leave today's episode feeling motivated and ready to take on your next challenge. Make sure to tune in to next week's episode with Sandra Caldeira, where we will tackle policymaking in science. We'll be back soon with more inspiring stories of women making waves in science.